Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this. Hey Soul Tribe, we have a really interesting episode for you today. It's actually a podcast episode that we were on. So it's with Sierra the Shanty Nomad. And we were on our podcast a while back, and we saved this episode to share with you guys because this is such a good episode, not only because she interviewed us and asked us such amazing questions, but also because we go really into our process as Akashic Record readers, the information that comes through, how we channel, what kind of questions you can ask. So this is a great episode if you're curious about getting a reading with us, or if you're curious about getting an Akashic Records reading really with anyone and how they work and what kind of information comes through and how you feel and all of that. She asked us really, really interesting questions, and I don't believe that we have an episode that kind of compiles all this information into one. So definitely take a listen to this episode and absorb all the information and see how you get along with the episode. And if there's any questions you guys have after listening to this, feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer any questions you have or any kind of inquiries about the Akashic Records. And I know we've done a bunch of episodes, but I think this is a really good one, just with all the information packed into one full episode. And Sierra's awesome. So thank you, Sierra, for allowing us to share this episode on our podcast. We really appreciate it. So let's get right into the episode.
So on today's episode, I have Lorena and Lucia with me from the Soul Tribe podcast, and they are going to be talking all about the Akashic Records. So I'm super excited to get into this episode and for you to all hear a little bit more about their background and for them to explain to us about the Akashic Records. So I don't know who wants to go first, but if you girls want to explain a little bit about your background, who you both are, and what your work is in the world, that would be beautiful for us to hear.
My name is Lorena, and with my sister Lucy, who's also on the call, she and I started a podcast, the Soul Tribe podcast, which is all about the Akashic Records because we're actually both readers, Akashic Record readers. And I guess the background for me for the Akashic Records would be kind of in sync with my self-love journey, with kind of listening to myself and starting to respect myself more. And I started reading my own Akashic Records probably when I was 25, and felt a pull a few years ago to actually start reading other people's records. And somehow that felt very aligned with also kind of respecting myself more and listening to myself and being able to get those messages from my masters and guides. And it's been like a really cool journey of healing through the Akashic Records, but also helping people and understanding myself better. And then the podcast just ties in so well with that because it's literally just helping people, putting information out and feeling like we're serving in some way, in a greater way than just one-on-one when you do a reading with somebody.
My story is a little bit different than Lorena's in the sense that it's like everything in my life, it's a little bit more dramatic. I was having really severe dream premonitions where I would see aviation accidents, and then I started realizing that they would happen in real life like 2 weeks to a month after I would dream about them. And so that went on for 3 years of my life till I had a complete emotional breakdown, because to me, I was just seeing people die, and then it was actually happening.
Wow.
And so I didn't I couldn't take it anymore. And I somehow ended up, through a long story of figuring out how to stop the dreams and trying to connect to other spiritual related people that might be able to help me, I ended up being told that I should go read my Akashic Records, which took me another almost a year to find someone at the time that could read my Akashic Records. But when we finally got there, we found someone. I went, and my big question was, why am I having these dreams? What am I supposed to do about it? And can I get rid of them? Because I really don't want them in my life anymore. And it was my wake-up call. And the explanation that I always tell everybody is, everybody gets their own form of wake-up call. And some people's it's super severe to the point of having their own, accident or losing a limb or getting, cancer and surviving it. Mine was these dreams for me to see that life is not just you thinking about things and trying to make things happen. There's something beyond the mental aspect of being. And that's what I was supposed to learn. And the fastest way for me to get rid of the dreams, I was told, was to start using my brain for something else more than thinking. That I could read the Akashic Records. I said, okay, I'll sign me up for the next class. I want to get rid of these dreams now. And that's how I became a reader. And then that was, I've been reading now myself and other individuals for a total of 11 years now. So it's saved me in many different ways.
Wow, that's a really incredible story. Thank you both for sharing. So I know that you're both living in two different locations right now, but of course you're sisters. So when you first came across the Akashic Records, I know you have two different stories with how you came across them, but was it around the same time? I'm not sure if your age differences, or did you kind of come across them at two separate times and then both had this pull and connection towards them, or towards it, I should say.
I think like the word Akashic Records came up around the same time for both of us. It was something our mom had mentioned, and then someone else kind of knew a reader, and then we both kind of like gravitated towards getting a reading from that person. And then after that, we found other readers, and it was just kind of really weird how like it seemed like when you're thinking about buying a red car and all of a sudden you see all red cars everywhere. It was kind of like
Right.
that. But I think my sister, due to the nature of like what she was going through, felt more called to actually learn to open other people's Akashic Records in a more like an urgent way, because she needed it spiritually. And for me, it was way like years down the line where I would learn to read other people's. But I think we both, I think she learned to read her own first, and then I might have done mine like a year later. So it's a different, we totally experienced it very differently.
I actually never thought about that question that she just asked us. Like, did we both bump into it in the same way? We were both living in Uruguay at the time. And if you speak from like a spiritual place, South America is already more open to spiritual stuff. It's like, there's no taboo about it. Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about it. Like you go to a party and everyone believes in something and everybody's open to something. At the time, the States it wasn't a thing really yet. But we were living in Uruguay, and I had seen a local astrologer who would talk on the radio, I think once a month, and kind of give people predictions. And my mom goes, I don't know what to do to help you. And my mom got me his number. And so I saw him, and he's the guy that told me, you need to go get your Akashic Records read. You need your own guides to tell you what's going on to get rid of this. And then at the same time, Lorena had heard about somebody she knew getting a reading, and that person recommended it to Lorena. So it was funny how it kind of both came into our lives at the same time.
Wow, I have chills
really
listening to that. That's so funny. And like, it's just so interesting that what it is that you're meant to be doing, or the gifts that you're meant to share with other people, you're so called to. Like, I personally have never heard of the Akashic Records until really your podcast, once we started to get in contact with one another. And then I like looked into it a little bit, but I still don't know much about it. So I'm really excited to hear from you, throughout this podcast episode and learn more. But that's something that I've never really heard of or have been exposed to. But then on your end, it was something that people were telling you, you need to, get your reading done, and you need to learn about the Akashic Records and, open up that whole book for yourselves. And that, has now been a huge path of both of your lives. So it's really amazing.
It definitely was a calling for both of us. I truly feel that in every way, because for me, even though it took years for me to kind of find that, I truly feel it today to be that way. Like I'm doing what makes me feel most in purpose, and I'm serving other people, and it's great. It really makes you feel aligned with yourself. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And it just sounds, I mean, it clearly is perfect alignment. And I love the fact that you're both, of course, your sisters, and you're doing this work together. I think that amplifies it so much more, and that you're both on the same page about it and both wanting to help people in the same way with offering these readings and really diving into the Akashic Records. So that is just so, so incredible that it's, this joint effort from the both of you.
Yeah, and we're even doing dual readings now together. So we'll both come together for somebody to open their records at the same time, and we both channel information, and it's amazing. Like it's so great.
But it's so funny because so we tested out a few people before we people reached us independently as readings, and we offered to charge the same at the time to both do a dual reading, so they're getting two channels at the same time. And we wanted to test it out that way before we promoted it. And it was like, for me at least, I had been reading other individuals for 11 years at that point. It was my first time like bringing someone in with me, okay, come do it with me. And so every reader is different, every channel is different, because the way you receive information, the way you kind of give it to the individual, like there's all these things that come into play when you're giving the person the information they need. And so Lorena's source, she taps into more like an emotional place, a place of like more intention, and how do you feel, and how did that affect you? How does that affect you now? How is that going to affect you, kind of thing. And me, it's like, you didn't do this, you should have done that, you did do this, that's okay, let's do this. Like I'm very earthy, and Lorena's very, let's talk about how you feel.
So wow, true. I love it. And I'm sure it's so powerful from the two totally different, I guess, visions of it, or like energy towards it, or the messages that you're getting from from your individual masters. And it's just, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain to us what the Akashic Records are, for anyone who's listening that might not really have been exposed to the Akashic Records before or have much of an idea?
So the Akashic Records, first of all, when you're getting a reading, you're getting an Akashic Records reading. And the word reading is there on purpose because it's coming from a book. And the book that's coming from is the book that's your soul. You could also hear it be named as like the book of life. And so Akashic Records is this infinite library. And if you were to be able to stand there on the fifth dimension, because it's another dimension from where we are, if you're able to stand there and look at what the Akashic Records look like, it's this infinite library from your feet all the way up to your head. And it's just a long corridor of books, but like it doesn't end. It's infinite. You cannot even see the end because it's so many books. And so those books that you're seeing, each book has an author, and the author of that book is a soul. So your soul is going to have a book, mine and Lorena's also. Everyone's soul has a book there, including pets, even plants, and they have their own book because they have a soul. They have a different kind of like collective than we do, so it's a little bit different. But for animals and for human beings, they have their own specific book, each soul. And if you were to be able to grab it, take it off the shelf and open that book up, which is basically what an Akashic Records reading is, you're accessing the information of the soul from every past life it's ever had. Now, sometimes we'll read an individual and we'll see that they had 300 years of experience, thousands of years of experience incarnating, but it doesn't matter. That they have their book, and it's just as important as every other book. And you'll be able to get the information that you need to help you figure out what's going on in your life now, understand what you're feeling, understand your struggles, understand repetitive situations. They'll talk to you about past lives, which sometimes you'll get individuals that will ask you, can I ask about past lives? Well, they're not going to give you, you were Caesar and you were Cleopatra, or you were, Marco Polo, or, all these famous people. Like, people want to hear famous people's names brought up. And they're not going to give you any specific past lives unless it's linked to the one that you're living now. And that's, for them, is relevant information. because if I tell you about a past life and it has nothing to do with this one, what am I doing? I'm just wasting your time and I'm just feeding your ego. So you're gonna hear about things that are affecting your current life and your current path and your current soul contract.
Wow, that's so interesting. There's so much to it. And I love that, what you were saying, that it doesn't tell you the specifics of the things that you don't need to know. So clearly it's always, I feel like when it comes to spirituality and all these spiritual tools that we can use in our own personal practices, it's always so simplified. And that's kind of the gist that I have behind this podcast too, is just really simplifying the things that we can utilize in our lives so that we can fall into alignment and so that we can have more clarity, because we tend to make things so complicated. So you just touching on the fact that like only the things that are important to your soul right now and what it is that you're experiencing and what it is that you need to know is what's brought to light, or what your, I guess your readings are through the records. That's right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, and whatever information comes up is what's going to help you heal. So another good thing to point out here is you'll receive information through your questions. So when you go get a reading, you'll need to have a few questions written down, and it's like you're preparing yourself to hear the answers, and your masters, your guides, and like beings of light will be able to kind of channel that information for that person in the best way possible for them to receive it in a way that they'll understand it and that they can process it, because obviously each reading's so different because of the person that's there with you. Obviously, most of our readings are done over Skype or Zoom, but energetically, that doesn't affect anything. You're channeling information from their masters and guides, and you'll be able to say it in a way, like every reading, for example, you'll be able to relay maybe the same message, but in a completely different way, because that person needs to hear it in that specific way. So it can like sink in and they can understand it. And through that knowledge, they can heal and expand and grow. I think knowledge is huge with the Akashic Records. So they're not going to burden you with information that you don't necessarily need. It's just going to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like how Lorena said that they'll hear it the way they need to. And that reminds me of quite a few readings I've had where it's not like this thing where your voice changes or anything. It's still your voice, it's still you, you're the channel, you're getting the information, you're just communicating it. But you will sometimes find yourself saying words that you wouldn't typically say. Not so long ago, I had a reading with someone who was a very articulate person, and they really liked words. They really liked specific words and finding a perfect word for, I guess, sentences and situations. So I found myself being very specific and using words that I wouldn't normally use, because that's what the words they were feeding me. And if you know me, if you ever heard me speak Spanish, my Spanish isn't as good as my English. It's good, but it's not as good as my English. I have more like a street Spanish because I learned it when I was like 15 and on. So like I'm not grammatically, I'm not like the most perfect in Spanish. And so when I read my parents, my dad, remember, went, "That's not my daughter speaking. She doesn't speak like that." And I'm like, "Well, Dad, you need to understand." Because my dad, he was just kind of like, "Okay, let me try it. Let me try it out." And so I gave him a reading, and it was when I was beginning. And he goes, "Those aren't the words you use." And I said, "Because they're not my words. Those are the words that the Akashic Records are giving me to say to you."
Right.
So that's what you're taught as a reader. Use the words that are given to you. Don't adapt them, because that word's going to mean more to that person than the word that you would normally use.
I love that so much. It's just so powerful. And I think a lot of people will experience that, right? When you're kind of told the same thing over and over and over again, but it doesn't click until one person says it in a certain way that just resonates for you in the way that like you needed to hear it, or that time frame that you needed to hear it. So it's sounding pretty similar to that. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I totally feel that. And that's happened with me as well. Like I can listen or read a book, for example, and then you read one book and it just all sinks in, and like you're able to like click things together and it makes sense. But you've read it 20 times before. I think it's that way. And they want you to understand what's coming through. They don't want you to leave a reading not understanding where you're at or the answer to your question. So it's important that we as channelers are able to provide the information in like the clearest way possible and as it comes through to us.
Absolutely. So I know that you were saying there's specific questions that you have to write down before you would go to a reading. What are those questions? Do they vary depending on what it is you're like needing at that time, or is it always the same 3 questions that you start off with?
You
The
can do
person,
that one, Lou.
yeah, the person can ask anything they want, really. The thing about question is, if you come to the Akashic Records and ask, oh, I want to ask about my sister Lorena, and I just ask about Lorena, I'd be like, oh, well, Lorena is a very intuitive, empathetic soul. That's it. Like, that's all you're really going to get. That question doesn't really give you much. But if I go, I want to ask about my sister Lorena and our relationship and how we're drawn to work together, and is there something behind that I can understand, or what can they tell me for me to understand the situation better? That question is going to get you the information you're looking for. Well, you and your sister signed a contract that basically says that you guys are going to try to help the collective awaken, and you're going to get that kind of response. Whereas if I'd asked just about her and gave her name, I would get basics about her as a person or as a channeler or whatever. So the importance of a question is, first, by you, before coming to the reading, by you writing down the question, the first step you're taking is you're telling the universe that you know that that's something that you need to hear about, that you're willing to hear what they have to say, and that you're willing to work on it if it needs to be worked on. I've had readings where and anybody that I read, I say, write down questions. If you don't write down questions, I'm not going to read you, because they're not going to get what they need, because they didn't open up to the universe. And it sounds like a silly like step, but it actually is the most important step of all of them. And so, I mean, I've had readings where the person said, yeah, okay. And then they didn't write it down. And then I ended up finding out that they didn't write it down. And then that to me made sense, because they didn't really get very much in the reading at all. And they were kind of like shut off a little bit. So the energy level of the person affects the reading, even though you're the channel. If they're coming to you in a form of being totally open, oh my God, the reading's going to be amazing. And if they wrote down the questions and they're ready to hear the truth, oh my God, that is going to be a life-changing reading. So where you are, if you're not in a good place and you're not ready to hear the truth about it, like, don't even waste your time getting a reading. So the question depends on the person and whatever issue they're having. And the way they format the question is going to affect the way that they receive the information, or how well they receive information. So sometimes as a reader, if you get somebody that comes, it'll be like, okay, this question, right? Do you think we can change the question to this? And as a reader, an experienced reader, you'll go and suggest that they ask in a different way. Or like, what are you trying to understand from this question? Oh, okay. Can we ask this? Because you're not allowed to ask it without their permission. Yes. Okay. Well, let's ask it that way. So after a few years, you're capable of playing with the words, and you know how to throw it at them for them to throw it back at you in a better way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of clarity, it sounds like, is needed. And I appreciate you saying, like, if you're not going to come with your questions, don't come, because it's going to be a waste of time. And that, I think, is important for people to hear and understand, what they're actually getting themselves into, and that, when they're actually ready to face what it is that they need to face, or hear what they need to hear, that's when the messages are going to come clearly. And that just only makes sense. So I really like that.
Yeah, it's so true, Lou, as well. Like, I think as a reader, you become, and as the time goes by, you become aware of the fact that you sometimes need to help people with their questions, because they're not, especially if it's their first reading. I definitely take extra minutes to sit down and just go through each question and say, okay, like, what is it you really want to know about this person or this issue? Is there something going on here? So it's kind of like you have to help them dig deeper too at moments, because they know they want an answer. They're just not knowing how to word the question.
Right.
And that totally makes a difference with the reading completely, like Lucia was saying.
Yeah, I could understand that. And I could, appreciate the feeling. I'm sure it might be like you get nervous, or you're just unsure of how to ask, or intimidated even of like how to clearly ask for what it is that you want, which I think is something that we just experience in general, right? We don't really typically give ourselves like the time and the space to truly ask for what we want with clarity, and just allowing it to be direct, and I think like as simple as it can be. So all of those things make sense that you are touching on there.
And it's funny because I'll add to that. A lot of times the person will have, usually people do come prepared. You tell them how important it is and they'll take it seriously and they'll come prepared with their questions. I don't ask to see them before because I like getting the intro message. I think that the person, usually the person that I'm reading, I don't know who they are. I don't even know their last name. I just ask them for like a first name and a contact so that I can get back to them if I don't find them online when I have to do the reading, and things like that. But like, I don't know anything about them and I don't want to. The less I know, the better, because Lucia's mind is not going to be prejudiced or criticizing anything about the person. I just want to go into it clean, not knowing anything about them and just telling them what I'm receiving. And so when they are meeting me online for the first time and I'm answering already half their questions just with an intro message, that's really impactful for them. And I don't want them, that's another reason why I follow that rule a lot with myself, because I want that impact for them, because that's what's going to create clarity for them and what's going to be like, oh my goodness, they're telling me this for a reason because she doesn't know anything about me.
Right.
And so a lot of times you'll find that the first 3 questions of the person are answered within the first 10, 15 minutes where I'm just saying what I'm getting before they're even asking their question. And that goes to show you, they opened up the portal and they said to the universe, I need to understand these things in my life. These are issues for me. I'm open to receiving the information about it. And so you just opened up the portal. All I did was I fed you back exactly what you gave to the portal. I just became the channel for you, what you had written down maybe a few days ago.
It's pretty, my method's completely different, but that's just what, I think as a reader, you just do what feels right for you. And I'm sure everybody's very different, but right. I think Lucia's method is pretty cool. And I've done that a few times. It's just, for me, I get a lot of first time people getting their reading, so it feels different. I don't know. It's just, I think you also evolve as a reader, it's like with any spiritual path, you change things and you kind of try things out and do things in a different way. So I think it's also good, if that works for some readers, that's great. And you might experience it in a different way if you get a reading from somebody, not us, for example. So it really depends.
I think it also has to do with personalities. When you're reading somebody, their masters are the most important ones there, besides their book and their soul and themselves, right? But while you're there as a reader reading somebody else, your masters and your guide is present because they're trying to keep you in a neutral place, and they're trying to make sure that you're doing your job properly. So you have kind of like your bosses behind you in a way. They're just making sure that you're doing it right. And so that influences also the way you read, because your masters are going to make sure that you receive the information the way they know that you work best. They know you as a channel, and they know you as an individual. And so what they do is they work through you using the way you are and what you are good at as a person. And they make sure that the person that reaches you, so someone today might hear this episode and be like, oh, I'm really attracted to the way Lorena does it, right? But that's because that they're more in tune with Lorena's energy. So it's not that one reader is better than the other. It's just that you might be more attracted to one way of one energy or one way of getting a reading. And so the masters actually use that to their own advantage for that person to reach the person that's going to give them the information that's going to give them like those aha moments, right?
Yeah,
and so Lorena's tactic is different because she's different. She's more, right. She's going to dip her toe in first, and then she's going to make sure you're emotionally prepared and ready to hear everything that's going to start coming. Whereas I'm always like in life, dramatic. I'm going to throw it at you and come on, get ready, put your bullet vest on. I'm going to throw it at you and let's go. And so those are the reasons why we're both very different as readers, because our energies are different, and the people that need Lorena are going to find Lorena and be attracted to Lorena, right? And the same way with me.
But also keep in mind that all the information you receive is also with like the most love and the most compassion. You're never going to hear something that's going to hurt you or make you feel like bad, right? It's all things for your higher good. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well, because a lot of people do go into a reading feeling a little bit scared or like a little bit nervous, I would say is probably the best word. So I think that's a good thing for maybe your listeners to know, that I think, especially with the Akashic Records, I wouldn't be able to speak for other channeling methods, but with this specifically, like everything comes from a place of love, and it's all for your higher good. So, it's all there for you. It's to benefit you.
I mean, you could ask about something today and they'll give you some information, and then you can ask about that make the same exact question and ask it in maybe a year, and the response will be more detailed, broader. Maybe they'll give you a little bit more, because what they say is they know how much you're prepared to listen to and how much you can take on at the time, and they're not going to pass that limit, because they're here to help you heal and understand, not to like Lorena had said at some point, not to overwhelm you. So they know what you're capable of handling, what you're emotionally capable of hearing, and they're not going to pass that line. So yeah, people do sometimes. I've had people cancel like last minute readings and be like, yeah, sorry, I can't do this. I'm really scared. And I respect it. I don't push them, but at the same time, they need to know that you're not going to hear anything that's going to make you like really upset or break down or go into a chaotic state. They know exactly how much you can handle.
That's super powerful. Everything that was just said there in that last topic, I think, was super powerful. But the fact, that it's all coming from a place of love, like you both said, I think people who, are new to this or are wanting a reading but are kind of hesitant. Of course, like there's always this fear because there's a fear of unknown, right? So you don't know what it is you're going to hear. You don't know what to expect. But knowing that this is coming from, your highest self or your guides, that is always going to be coming from a place of love and pure guidance for you to, be at the place that you need to be at within your life. So just kind of knowing that, I'm sure will put people at ease for sure. And I'm sure that you relay that to all of your clients that you work with as well. And just to kind of set that tone for them so they know that, nothing bad is going to come through, which is super powerful as well.
There's this example I like to give that many years ago, one of Lorena and I did various Akashic courses because we kept going to classes, but we would like what person taught, but we felt like something was lacking. And for me, I did more than one like the class level 1 and 2, I did it more than once with different classes with different teachers. And so there was one of those teachers that I liked the way she said things sometimes. And she said, your Akashic records are going to tell you what you need to hear for you to continue the path that your soul decided it need to learn from. So let's say that you're supposed to meet this one guy, an example for a girl. If you're supposed to meet this one guy and the plan is that you're going to, for example, marry him, and he's going to teach you something specific, but he's only there for part of your life. Once you learn that, you guys are going to part ways. And so maybe the guy isn't the best for you, but he was there to teach you that specific lesson. So if you go and ask the Akashic Records, I want to ask about this guy, and you ask about him, and they'll be like, oh, yes, go for it. They're always going to say go for it, even though if it ends like dramatic and awful, but because your soul needed that lesson, your soul had signed the contract for it. So there's like a lot playing when you get a reading. You're going to get information that's going to put you down the path that your soul can expand the most, and that signed the contract towards that path. Right.
No matter what that outcome is going to be for the time being, of course, it's always going to lead to the best outcome, but we don't always see that, when we're going through it. But, in the long run, that's what it's leading to. So that made me laugh when you had said that it'll say, go for it, but it's not going to tell you all of, the details of what's going
but once you come back to get your reading, you'll be like, why did you tell me? Or I'm upset about because this happened. To be like, because you learned this and this and this and then that, and your soul is very thankful.
It's right, like, damn. This honest truth is too much.
So true though.
So I mean, when would someone use Akashic record readings, or when would you need it? Is it literally for like any kind of question that you would have, or do you find that people mostly come to you when they're experiencing something like major in their life?
I think there's a mix of stuff there. I mean, I think usually you don't want to really ask a lot of yes or no questions. Those don't really get you anywhere. But I think in general, if someone comes to you with a specific issue, or sometimes, for example, I've gotten readings where people are coming to me because they're going through something like a super rock bottom, or they know that they have some type of family trauma and that they don't understand how to navigate it, or how to heal it, or what it means. And then they can get answers on like how profound it goes. It could go back to like another life. It could go back to other contracts in another life. So just getting that info sometimes can help heal. Like, for example, I've had a reading where someone's asked about their mother, and they don't understand why they do not get along with their mother and why they feel like they hate their mother. And nothing specific happened, but it was something linked to a past life. And just understanding that concept they were able to like kind of let it go and have some type of empathy for their mother, and then their relationship changed without them having to do anything.
Wow.
It's just the knowledge, but the questions in themselves really depend on the person. People can come to you about specific things they're going through, maybe like a career change, and they can ask about, relationships, about their relationship with themselves. That comes up a lot with me, with people that come to me, I think because of my own journey probably, and that's why they feel called to me.
I love that you said that, because everything you're explaining is very you. And I actually don't get those readings very much, which makes sense. My readings are more like, I need you to confirm that I'm supposed to make this huge life change in my life, which is either relationships or career. And those are all things that I usually go through much more than you, Lorena. So it's like, I can see how it's true that you attract the person that is most attuned to your own path and the way you function.
Totally. But I think with questions, it really is what, if you were to get a reading tomorrow, like people can ask themselves, like, what would I ask about? And obviously not everybody's going to want a reading. So you have to really feel called to it. We don't force anybody to get a reading. We don't push anybody to do that. You really have to truly feel ready for it. Unless like, if you go and just get a reading for the heck of it, it's like, are you really open to it? Like, you need to really go with
purpose.
A direction, a purpose. Yeah. I think that's super important. That's why just writing down the questions helps.
So who can read Akashic Records? Like, I know that you two both have your own individual stories as to how you were kind of drawn to reading them, and they're both totally different. So, is this open to anyone to be able to do, or do you find that it's mostly people who have like this strong drawing or calling or story behind, how they got connected to the Akashic Records, or anything you can share on that?
You don't have to have any experience with, like I did, dream premonitions. You don't have to have psychic abilities. You don't have to be a medium. You don't already have to be a channeler or intuitive. Anybody can read the Akashic Records. The only rule that they set is that you're at least 18 years of age, because those under 18 should not be tapping into their Akashic Records till they're 18 or above. And be mentally stable. That's another thing. But then after that, anyone can get their records read, and anybody can become a reader. But you'll find that the people that will come into the field of interest in learning how to do it for themselves and for others are those that are open, because if you don't believe in it, you're not gonna even try, obviously. Right. So the only thing we say with Lorena is you just got to have an open mind, the good intention, because if you're trying to tap into the Akashic Records to steal information from someone else's book or to like use information against someone, good luck. They're probably going to block you from tapping in. So your intention is what's going to make you succeed in connecting with the Akashic Records or not. And that's it. That's all you need. A good intention, 18 years, and then you can become your own reader. You don't have to have any abilities. Yeah.
From my personal experience, it was more like getting that feeling, like I need to learn to read my own Akashic Records, or I need to learn to read Akashic Records for somebody else. Like if you have that feeling inside of you, and obviously you have all those things that Lucia mentioned, then you're on the right path. You're getting some type of calling, or like a wake-up call to do this, because maybe the world needs it. Maybe you need it.
Right. So why 18? Is it because by that point you've experienced a certain amount of life that can be spoken on, or it's just an emotional standpoint? Like you said, your mental stability needs to be there, but
what the masters say is you're intervening still with the karmic process of the soul. Up until you're 7, your crown chakra is open. 7 years old, your crown chakra is open, and there's actually still some karma that could be taken off of your list, or karma can be added on. Things in your contract and your plan can change up, and it usually does for most children up to 7. But once 7, the crown chakra starts closing. From 7 to 18, there's still time to kind of erase something in the contract or add something. It's not as common or, it's not such a normal thing, but that you still aren't permitted to tap into the book and kind of it's almost like you're putting yourself in the middle between what might be a future process. So it's almost like they consider you disturbing the possible connection with their contract. And so nothing's set in complete stone in your contract till you're 18. Once you're 18, then that's confirmed that nothing's going to change. Nothing can be really added or nothing can be taken out by 18.
Okay. I also believe it's like the free will part of it, because up till you're 18, you're pretty much kind of guided by your parents, right? And the moment you turn 18, it's like you're able to decide things for yourself legally. And I think that might also have, that's in my own opinion, that's kind of how I see it. It's like there's a whole spiritual side, but there's also like some type of earthy thing that I kind of feel called to say there.
That's interesting. So what are the steps to reading the Akashic Records?
They're basically the same. They're done differently. You have a sacred opening and closing verse for both, which the trained reader uses. So if I'm giving you a reading and you're sitting on the other side of my computer or sitting in front of me, I will ask you for your full name. That's the key to access your Akashic Records book. And with your full name and me using the sacred verse, I would open up the Akashic Records. But after, I would say maybe about after 3 or so years of becoming a reader, it's almost like you've gotten to a point of connection, a strong connection, that you can just the intent of going, I think I'm going to open up my Akashic Records and ask about this, or I'm going to open up my Akashic Records because I want to make sure they're open while I do this. Sometimes the intent will already open them. So it gets to a point where you're so connected that you no longer need the verse. But that's the only process you really need. Just be relaxed, open them with the verse and the full legal name.
It makes me think of like Kundalini, how you have to tune in and tune out. And so I guess sort of similar to that. So you would just really ask them their name, do the opening verse, and then just go into their questions. Yeah. And then from there, is it only like the 3 questions that you allow, or is there room for more?
Oh, no. I mean, sometimes I'll answer 12 questions or more. I don't really have a rule, and I never tell people you can ask these many questions. What I say is, we have an hour and a half till my channel starts getting tired. That's basically the only issue. And so I'll say that I'll stay strong for an hour and 30 minutes. Sometimes I can make a little bit more maybe, but then my responses start getting not so vivid and not so, so urgent. But I don't like to hang up the call till the person has everything understood and everything responded. And funny enough, most individuals in 45 minutes are the ones that end the reading and go, yeah, you answered all my questions. Everything's understood. Like, I feel like there's nothing else I need to ask.
Oh, wow.
So true.
Wow.
I usually give like an estimate of questions that we can fit in, but as like Lucia said, I will always like reiterate to people, I don't want you leaving this reading like missing out on a question or not understanding something. Like the most important thing for me is that you leave the reading understanding every single thing that's come up here. And questions usually will come up, like they'll add questions in sometimes during the reading because there's a topic that they asked about and it was related to, let's say, a family issue that they didn't even think was going to come up. And it does, because a lot of times it does. And then they'll get, way more questions in, or, things answered related to that question that could have been another question, but it really wasn't. It just came through as an answer. But yeah, after an hour and a half, you definitely feel a lot of tiredness, like you feel tired, and it's like your head, like my head starts getting a little bit like tight. It feels like weird.
Oh, wow.
And it feels like you're not relaying the information in the best way possible. So yeah, definitely an hour and a half is like the maximum for a reading.
It's funny because I don't know why I was just thinking about this, but I've been reading for so many years, and yet in the amount of years I've read, I can't even count on both hands the fingers, like men that I've read. Like it's way less than that.
Way less. Yeah.
you get women all the time. Women are so open to this stuff, but men don't seem to be open to it fully yet. And if they are, it's because, you know, they're totally convinced and they're already on that path.
Right.
But yeah, it's very rare.
So do most of your clients find you through like social media, would you say?
The podcast is big, I think.
Yeah, your
and
podcast.
Through social media. And I think for us, personally, both of us, it's word of mouth. Like someone will have a reading with us and then they'll, you know, refer their mother and their sister and their friend. And then it's just like this kind of ripple effect of just people recommending you.
I think for me, mostly it's somebody will be, oh, you read my friend 3 years ago. And then, or, you know, they'll message you and they'll pass the information, or, you know, you read my mom and and then you end up finding out you read their whole family. Like, oh, really?
So when that's like happening, when you're reading, you know, of course, word of mouth, and you're doing for one family member and then you end up doing the next, do you personally, I have a few questions on that. Do you personally remember what the answers were for each person?
No, you don't. I don't even remember the person usually. Like I find myself saying, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry, I don't remember your mom or your sister. Like,
it happened to me just recently. Like one person had a reading with me 6 months ago, and then they wanted to come back for another reading. And I don't remember anything they asked or what I said to them. Like, you totally tune out completely. Right. It's not your information. You don't keep that. It's theirs.
Right.
But they record it, so obviously they can go back to it and keep referring back to it as much as they need. But we tune out. It's part of also, I think, a way of energetically, like, kind of taking care of yourself in a way. Because if you keep all that info, imagine it'd be just, you can remember snippets. Like Lucia and I can tell you stories of, I had a reading like this because there are things that stood out to us, but I don't know who that was. I don't know who that person was that I said that to.
Wow.
Like, it's just
That's
really
so
weird.
Crazy. Yeah.
I'll usually match the story up because it called my attention, my like Lucia mind attention. I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. That kind of reminds, and I'll think to myself at the time that reminds me of something, or I found that really interesting. And so when I remember that moment, I remember the face that's on the other side of my screen, but I'll usually not remember the name or the story behind everything. I won't remember that.
Wow.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if you're doing, you know, all of these different family members, and I know that you had said earlier that you come into it with the pure intention of being the channel for the messages. So you're not in a place where you're wanting to interfere, or you're wanting to, you know, cause or, you know, project judgment or anything like that. You're just truly relaying the messages on what it is that they need to hear. So I was wondering if there's any times that you might feel like, okay, like I kind of know this story and that story, and now I'm like helping everyone in the family. But I guess that's not the case if you're kind of tuning out and totally not being.
Yeah, I don't remember anything, and I already have a bad memory, so it's pretty bad. So that makes it even worse. But I feel like that protects me, because if I remembered everything, you know, you can hear some very traumatic things, some things that are very sad. And, you know, when you're in the Akashic Records and you're getting these questions and someone's maybe bawling and they're crying and they're upset about something because it's bringing up emotions that they need to release in order to heal, because that happens during a session too. Yeah. I have no judgment. Like, I am in my zone. I am channeling. I don't know what's going on. I'm just telling you what you need to hear. And I have an urgency to get that information out, because they're going to say it once and they might not say it twice. So you just gotta, you're in your zone. You're completely.
That's also, if you listen to the podcast, you hear Lori and I talking over each other and like stopping each other because we don't want to lose what we're getting.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure.
But that being said, that's a good way of saying it, Lorena, because I've found myself with people in front of me crying, saying really awful things, which it looks like I don't care because my face doesn't change. I don't cry. I don't get emotional about it. I just give you the and like we keep going through it together, and I'll tell you what I'm getting. I found myself stopping for a second, saying, sorry, this is Lucia speaking now. Like, these are my words. You know, I clarify just in case, like, it's not that I'm not feeling what you're feeling or I'm not caring. It's just that I'm just tapping into the Akashic Records. I'm not Lucia right now. Like, I'm not feeling like Lucia would feel. So don't think that I'm not considerate of what you're feeling. Because some people think they find it weird that you're not crying with them and they're going through something difficult. So just in case, sometimes I'll stop if it's really severe which is very rare that I find I feel the need to stop to say that. But it happened to me once when a girl was crying about her boyfriend had shot himself like in the head, and she was having a really tough time. And I remember I said to her, I'm sorry, like I'm not going to get emotional. I'm not going to emotionally support you and like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Like I was like, I'm not going to give you any human support. I'm just going to give you what the master have to say. And so they gave her the information she needed, and I think it helped her. But yeah, like I'll remember sometimes to say that to people.
Yeah, I'm sure people who, when you're in that deep expression of emotion and feeling so hard, whatever it is that you're releasing or going through, you kind of want that empathy back. But I think it's great that you clarify and just say, this is not me here sitting with you to have that kind of conversation. It's more so I'm just here to support you in terms of giving you what you need.
Yeah, and I'll say that as well at the beginning of like a reading. I say, if you have any feelings that you need to let out during the reading, please let them out. Like it's important that you don't hold anything back, because if you do, that's not going to allow the complete healing to occur.
Right.
So yeah, I think if people like would be a great episode for someone to understand that, right? Like all this information is amazing, because it's not something that we generally have time to kind of sit down and tell them every step of this, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But this is great because they can understand it and and it's not so much from a place of judgment, because I don't worry about what the person's thinking about at the moment. I'm just like literally so focused on getting the information for them to heal, for them to really like understand what's going on and understand themselves better. So
right. So I know that, of course, with the information that you're getting through the Akashic Records as you're doing your readings, you're using the word channeling. So for anyone who might not know what channeling is or understand that, would you be able to explain a little bit more and like what channeling a message is and how you both are able to channel messages, and how, maybe that started happening for you in terms of like understanding what it was you were hearing and, even what those voices sound like to you personally?
So channeling would be, I'm trying to find words to describe it for someone that might not be already into this. It's basically you're a portal, or you're an open door to receiving information. In this case, it can come from your book, the beings of light, the masters, your guide, even your soul. What you're doing is you're actively giving space in yourself that's going to come in through the crown chakra, and you're going to receive. In this case, this is how this tool works. I don't know how other channelers work, but the Akashic Records, it comes in through crown chakra. It comes into your brain, but you have to remember that in their worlds, in these other dimensions, they don't speak words. They don't have vocal cords like we do. What they do is they give us information via vibration. So they send the vibration to our brains through the crown chakra, and then our brains convert it to whatever language you speak. So if I'm reading someone that's in front of me and they speak Spanish, my brain knows Spanish. My brain can convert that vibration into words in Spanish so that person knows what they're trying to channel through me or send through me, right? If it's English, obviously I say in English. But what you are basically is an open door to receive that vibration, and that vibration will convert into words, into the language that we understand and we can relate to.
For some people, you're very visual, Lucia, for example. So
yeah,
you'll see a lot of things. For me, it's feeling. I just feel things. Like I physically feel things in my body, and I'll say a lot of like, for example, I feel like this is happening, or I feel like you're going through this, or I feel like when this time of your life you were feeling this way. So it's like it comes through and I can express it in a feeling, not all the time, but it comes through as words. I'll see words. Like, for example, the word yes will come up and I'll see it like, it's like a sign, like a lit up sign, or like a yes with exclamation point. So I'll see words, but I'll also see like a past life. I can see what the person was wearing. I can see where they were. I can see what was around them. Or they'll show metaphors for things, and like maybe they're feeling something and then they'll put it into like a vision for them because maybe they need to see it that way. Like, for example, I feel like I feel like you feel tied to the situation. So I'll see them like their hands tied behind their back, or that things are pulling them from different ways, and there's like ropes or chains or something.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I'll see those things sometimes, but I mean, it depends on what the person needs to hear and how it comes through, because I think, at least this is how it is for me. Lucia can speak for herself, but I think I adapt a little bit to the person that comes to me, because if the person needs to receive the information fully, how I am as like an empath and feeling things, they will receive it that way. But if they're more a visual person, or they're, more auditive, like I'll hear more things or see more things. And I think that helps them receive the information better.
I think I'm more stubborn than you, so they have to stick to the way I am. They're not going to adapt to the person. They know I am how I am, and they got to send it that way. I'm like a very visual person, so they kind of knock a lot of visions like my way. And you say view, it's not like looking out the window and looking outside your house on, the garden in the front or something. You're seeing it from like it's almost like you're trying to, when you do like a meditation, you try to imagine something. Mm-hmm. That's how you get it, but it's not something you're forcing. It just comes all of a sudden there into your imagination's eye, is how I describe it. And your memory remembers it. So you'll continue to like do the reading, and you'll explain what comes behind the image. Sometimes you'll describe the image so that they understand what you're seeing. And then they might they'll keep throwing you to remember that image, because it's still linked to more things. Sometimes one image can help you decipher a lot of information, which will give a lot of words out. Like Lorraine said, past lives, that's a big one. Like we'll see what they're wearing. I'll see like if what kind of road they were walking, or what the house, what the land that was on, or whatever. I've seen, individuals living in poverty in what looked like the 1800s, for example. Like you kind of pick up on eras and go, okay, this is back then, this is this. Okay, that looks like the clothes you're wearing reminds me of this. So they're not really telling you details because they don't care, but they're trying to paint you a picture so the person understands how that human being that was living felt at the time. They don't care if it was in 1920 or if it was in 1820. They care that you understand the atmosphere and what it made that person feel.
Okay, so what was your most insightful or powerful experience from using the Akashic Records that you feel comfortable sharing?
Oh man,
I think for me it was my own, but because it was my first ever reading, so it was almost like my huge aha moment in life where I'm like, what? And I had gone to ask about my dream premonitions, and I started getting responses about things, and it made sense. Like I had asked about at the time about an ex-boyfriend, and they explained about something that he had supposedly had issues with my soul in another life. And it totally made sense for something he had done to me that hurt me very severely. And somehow I had been fighting like 3 years against this situation with him, emotionally feeling like he hurt me so much. And literally in 10 seconds, I was able to go, whoa, what you just said makes total sense. And I was able to let it go. Like this thing that I was holding a grudge for 3 years, I didn't get back together with him. It was just me kind of somehow forgiving him and letting myself close that chapter.
Wow.
That's so powerful. That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's so fast,
And that happens all the time. And people come back and say, wow, I can't understand how it worked, but it worked. For me, I mean, there have been really powerful and interesting experiences opening other people's records of like, I don't know, like messages coming through that there's no way I would have known. And they're like, how did that come through? I'm like, I don't know. They're giving me the message, but I don't know if I'd be able to share those completely. But I think for me, if I were to think of something that was probably the most powerful, was just also getting a reading from somebody else and feeling that sense of just complete peace and understanding my path and understanding that where I was that day was okay, and that I was on my path, and that even though I felt like I didn't love myself, or I felt like I was lost in some way, I wasn't. I was just going down the path I needed to learn the lessons I needed to learn. And just that sense of peace, that for me was so powerful. And that's why I kept going back for readings every few months, because it gave me that sense of like, I understand myself. I know where I am, and it's okay if I'm not where I thought I'd be right now. But I understand it. And that's powerful, I think, that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that reassuring feeling that exactly everything is okay. And like you said, you get that peace that kind of just washes over you, that even though you might feel like you're lost or confused, you are still, in the place that you need to be at, which I think is something that a lot of people, I'm sure, can relate to or want to feel within their lives.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think the other thing for me was that same reading. I'd been feeling alone for the past 3 years because I was going through the dream premonitions, and I was, in my mind, I was just seeing people die severely, and then it was happening. And so I was just emotionally broken down, and I felt alone, and I felt like we're all going to die. It was like everything was devastation in my mind at the time, but because I kept seeing devastation in my dreams. And then when I was in the reading, I remember she would say, your master say this, your guide says that, your soul, and my soul will communicate things directly. And I was like, huh. And they described things about me, and they said things about me that were like, they know me really well. Like, I didn't even know that about me. Now you're saying it. Yeah, that makes sense. That is me. And that's the moment I thought, I'm never alone. Like, I remember leaving thinking, oh my God, I'm never alone. Like, why have I been crying about being alone when I'm actually never alone? So that was like this amazing moment for me, because I never again ever in my life felt alone after that.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Oh. So anyone who wants to get a reading from either both of you together or individually with one of you, where would any listeners be able to find you?
They can just go on maybe just our Instagram or our website. When I say our, I mean the Soul Tribe podcast, because that's just the easiest way to communicate with both of us at the same time. So the Soul Tribe podcast website is www.thesoultribepodcast.com. Our Instagram handle is @soul_tribe_podcast. And then we have our own accounts as well. My Instagram account is @Lorena Espiga _wellness. And Lucia's, I don't know what yours is. Maybe you can.
I don't know.
I think yours is @Lucia Espiga.
I'll tag them below in the show notes anyway.
Is it possible to have a dot in the middle of yours? I don't know. I know my website is www.luciaespiga.com, and Lorena's is lorenaespiga.com.
Yeah, maybe that's just easier.
Well, I'll definitely link their information below for anyone to find them. I think it would be amazing to definitely get readings done with you ladies. So powerful, and I love speaking with you. And this is obviously the second podcast that we've recorded together, but I feel like I could talk to you both for hours.
The second podcast, but the fifth attempt.
Unfortunately.
It worked out perfect though. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having us,
Sierra.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you both.
We hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We want to thank Sierra again for allowing us to share this interview on our podcast. We really wanted to share this because I think it kind of compiles all the information about the Akashic Records, our process, and I think this is going to help any of you that might be interested in getting a reading. So yeah, I hope this is useful information for you all. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send them via Instagram, Facebook, or even our website form. All the links will be on the show notes, so check those out. And we will be back next week with a new episode. It'll be an interview, and it's a good one, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And feel free to share this episode with anybody that might be interested in this, that might be interested in the Akashic Records, or just, spirituality in general. This helps get the podcast out to more ears, and that helps us, so we would greatly appreciate it. We hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week with a new episode. Bye, guys.